Hey there, everybody. Sajah here once again. And I was inspired to share a little video with you here, talking about the elements a little bit more. We're finally getting some rain here in Southern Oregon, which, me originally being from Northwest Washington, this just feels like home. And, it's kind of making me think about the elements and the seasons, and how, as we change seasons, and how these different elemental forces kind of become more strongly influencing in nature and in our own constitution and our temperament, and how the elements hold these really powerful teachings for how we can learn how to strategically live our lives in harmony with the constant flux and change in nature and with the seasons. So I wanted to share a little bit about the water element in a little bit more detail, and kind of provide for you like a little framework and a kind of a way of thinking about how the elements influence our understanding of plant medicine and the human constitution, and also share a little bit about how, through that energetic understanding of herbs, provides this really incredible framework for how you can actually extract that energetic principle within the plant. So, kind of first thinking about our bodies, thinking about the different organ systems and tissues that water element governs. Well, the first and kind of most obvious one, right, is our kidneys and our urinary tract, right? That whole organ system's function is regulating the solid and liquid balance in our body. Of course, fluid excretion through the kidneys and urinary tract is one of its primary functions. So that's our key organ system that's ruled by the water element. But also the lymphatic system is a really important aspect of the water element too, because that's really like the way my teacher Matthew Wood describes, it's like the inner ocean, right? And it's that cleansing action of the lymphatic system that cleans the blood, and it's where our immune system, a lot of our immune system is located in the lymph, and it's really that purification aspect of the water element through the lymph. Also, the mucous membranes are very important there, rulerships of the water element, and we see those mucous membranes coating all of the tissues that are exposed to the outside environment. So the respiratory system, the urinary system, and the digestive system are all coated in these mucous membranes that secrete these antibody-rich fluids that essentially protect our body from any sort of invasion. I kind of think of it as like a moat surrounding the castle, is the mucous membranes. And so, one of the reasons I like talking about this is, when we approach the human body from just a physical, a kind of physiological perspective, we don't really see an interconnection between the lymphatic system and the kidneys and urinary tract and the mucosal membranes. They all kind of seem very separate. But when you take a step back and look at the human organism through these more holistic lenses of energetic systems like the planets or the elements, it starts to link together different parts of our physiology and our anatomy that at the surface don't really seem that connected. The water element within the human being also really primarily relates to our emotional body, right? It's that flux and change and kind of constant fluid nature of our emotions as they're constantly changing in our day-to-day lives. Whereas the earth is our physical body, and the air is our mental body, kind of our intellect, and fire relating to our intuition or more to our spirit. And so the water element relating to the emotional layer of the self. Now, if we look at plants, we can see the water element influencing plants in a lot of different ways, from plants that grow in, around, or near water, plants that have a high water content, plants that act on those organ systems of the body. So take, for example, Cleavers, Gallium aparine. That's a plant that really holds the signature of that water element, right? It likes to grow in very moist parts of the forest. It acts on the kidneys as a diuretic. It acts upon the lymphatic system as a lymphagogue, and it just kind of has this overall cooling and moistening effect on the tissues, which also is related to the water element. So we can also think of not just the organ systems, but the state of those organ systems as relating to an element. So from the physiomedical's perspective, they would say like the water element, as it impacts a tissue, they call damp stagnation, which is where the waters are kind of congested and congealed and stuck and kind of leading to a toxic state. So Cleavers is great for treating that damp stagnation tissue state in the body. So there's a lot of ways that we can understand herbs through that lens of the elements, from how they grow, where they grow, their morphology, their color, their texture, their shape, their actions, the affinities on the body, their tastes, as well as some of their more, I guess, psycho-spiritual properties as well. And in the case example of Cleavers there, I tend to think more psycho-spiritual properties in relationship to the planets. But the planetary ruler for Cleavers is Venus, and Cleavers, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's kind of a really sticky plant. Like, you know, if you pick a Cleavers and throw it at someone, it just totally sticks and like, cleaves to your clothes, and so it kind of clings on to things. And what we see Cleavers, that's a signature for the way Cleavers impacts us on the psycho-spiritual level. And so Cleavers is really great for relational issues. That's why it relates to Venus, which also relates to the water element and the second chakra, is relationship issues, and especially where people are very like overly attached or overly clingy, or even people that just have attachment issues in general. That can be attachments to outcome, attachments to material objects, attachments to the way things need to be, and kind of not surrendering and going with the flow, right? Which is so much of what the water element teaches us. And so I just wanted to talk about this water element a little bit, and kind of give you a way of stepping back and looking at these bigger patterns in herbs. And that really is the power of having these energetic frameworks, is that it ties everything together, right? So you don't have to memorize all these different aspects about the plant, all these different aspects about the people or the constitution that it's good for, the tissue state, but really like something like the elements or the planets gives you a framework where it's just like, oh, water. And that water element relates to how that plant acts, how it grows, what type of people it works on, as well as its evolutionary virtue. And last, I wanted to just share about kind of bringing in the alchemy side of things. And so, okay, say you have a plant that strongly relates to this water element. Well, how would you concentrate that water element, that energetic principle into a medicine? And that's really where spagyrics come in. And, you know, there's a handful of ways you could do that, but a great way is through the astrology. And one of the ways I like to think of that would be to pick and to harvest and prepare and do all of the work with that plant when the moon is in a water sign. So Cancer or Scorpio or Pisces. And if you were to say to be distilling that Cleavers, for example, you would probably want to distill or extract that Cleavers during when the moon is full in one of those water signs, because it's the feeling of that element is at its pinnacle during those times. So as you're distilling the alcohol, for example, off of that Cleavers, and you're doing it when the moon is full in those water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, you're basically turning that spirit, that alcohol of the plant, into a vapor, right? It becomes invisible. And then as that invisible spirit condenses on the glassware, basically goes into the invisible world and then turns visible again, it's collecting that celestial energy of whatever's happening macrocosmically in the astrology of that time. So if you think about that, you know, Cancer and Scorpio and Pisces kind of in a way represents the body, the spirit, and the soul of the water element. And so you're concentrating that water element side of the Cleavers, and it's going to drive it deeper into those tissues. But say if you wanted that Cleavers to be specific for the lymphatic system, you would really just want to focus it on Pisces, because Pisces rules the lymphatic system. If you wanted to focus it on the bladder and the urinary tract, you would distill it under Scorpio, because Scorpio rules the bladder and the urinary tract. So I just wanted to illustrate a little example there. I know I'm kind of going on for a while here about all of this, but I just wanted to illustrate how understanding an herb through this elemental model gives you some really interesting insights into the nature of plants and even into the preparation of plants in that energetic way. So thanks so much for checking out this video here. If you haven't checked it out yet, I've got a 3-part video training series going on my website at evolutionaryherbalism.com. So head over there, plug in your name and email, and I've got 3 videos that go into a lot more in-depth on some of this framework and these teachings around evolutionary herbalism. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your Sunday.